and hopefully I will give you some practical things to do to make your communication go better. Before we get started, I just want to kind of introduce myself. I'm sure a lot of you know who I am, but I'm also sure there's a lot of you who have no idea. So my name is Sharon Burton. There's a picture of me. I'm a content consultant. What that means is typically clients discover that they're having problems, or they don't know what their best practices are, or things have changed, or whatever. And they decide for many very good reasons to bring in somebody from the outside. And that's typically me. I'm also an STC Associate Fellow, which is something I'm enormously proud of. I have been trying to change the world through the entire course of my career, and my STC Associate Fellow is a recognition of that, and that made me very, very happy. So I've been doing what I do for 20 years, which is I find amazing sometimes, because I literally, as most of us do, fell into this career, discovered I really, really enjoy it, and it's always interesting. So, and I think what we do is really important, and thus my teaching. I teach communication to engineering students at the University of California, Riverside. We are a top 10 engineering school in the country, and the program decided a few years ago that they were graduating engineers who couldn't communicate. I know. Many of you are just shocked. Really, you're saying? Engineers who can't communicate, what a strange school. And so every engineering student that comes through the school has to, at some point, take my class. So if you are working with young engineers who seem able to communicate, send me a thank you note. I'm changing the world one engineer at a time. I also teach for some other places. So that's fun. I enjoy it. I like it a lot. And obviously I do custom training stuff for clients. So I just want to say today, DCL is supporting us today. So if you have any questions, anything like that, they've hosted this webinar for us, and they're going to help. And I want to say thank you. Let's do a virtual round of applause for Data Conversion Labs for hosting this webinar. They've been doing a fantastic job of hosting webinars in general for our field and providing all kinds of wonderful learning opportunities, and I just think that's amazing. And since they are hosting us, here's a short ad. DCL is a fantastic place if you are in the position of looking at buckets of legacy content and you need to convert it and bring it up to date into the modern century. Most of us are in the position of having a lot of legacy content, and the thought of moving all that legacy content into our current system can make most of us put our heads down on the desk and want to cry. So that's the kind of thing that DCL does, and they do it really, really well. And I couldn't be happier. They've won awards for it, all kinds of stuff. So they kind of solve everything, and they do it in this wonderful way. The thing that I am particularly excited about recently is Harmonizer. And what Harmonizer does is it lets you baseline the content reuse possibilities in your legacy content. And that's one of the things that my clients typically are flipped out about. They're moving to content reuse systems. They really want to leverage that content reuse. But how do you analyze your existing legacy content and know what can be reused or perhaps rewritten a little bit to be reused, etc.? And Data Conversion has this tool called Harmonizer, which is very reasonably priced. It's amazing. It is just amazing. So I want to point that one out to you because that's the product I think is a big deal. They've done this for lots and lots of clients. You know, they're not doing this for Joe Smith in his garage. They're doing this for real clients, big clients, giant clients. So if they can handle GlaxoSmithKline, they can handle you. I mean, really, or Smithsonian. And gosh, would that have been a fun project to have been part of. And kind of regardless of your industry, they can help you out. So they're the people. They're the go-to people. I go to them for all of my stuff. So there you go. So let's give them a virtual round of applause for hosting this webinar and others, really showing their commitment to our field and making sure that we're all kind of up to date and a little bit smarter, hopefully, by the day's end. All right, so before I get into the webinar, I want to do a little bit of webinar mechanics because I find that helpful to people. If you have been talking, trying to get our attention, we can't hear you. All of you are muted, and you're muted automatically. This isn't personal. We want everybody to have a good webinar experience. So everybody is muted. If you have a question, go to the questions pod pane of the GoToWebinar pod and type the question in. We have a DCL representative who is answering urgent questions in real time, and we will be having time for questions at the end. So he'll be helping me out with that at the end. We are, in fact, recording this webinar. None of your information will appear in the final webinar, so don't worry about your privacy being violated. We aren't doing that. Tomorrow at some point, we all know technology, so that's as definite as I wish to be. There will be a recording link available, and you all will get that recording link so that you can look at the video again, share it with your friends, whatever else it is you're going to be doing. You'll also be getting a link to the SlideShare. I'll be posting these slides on SlideShare. You'll also be getting a link to the SlideShare so you can download these slides, print them out, roll around on the floor on them, whatever it is you wish to do with that. That will all be available to you. We should be done at the top of the hour, but I have built in time for questions at the end. If there are a lot of questions and people want to stay for a little bit after the top of the hour, we can absolutely do that. But we will stop, we have a plan to stop at the top of the hour. So if we go over, it will be with just questions. Because I know you're busy. I know I'm busy. We're all busy people. So there you are. All right, so let's get started. Let's start by looking at audience and communication. And let's start especially with what is communication. Now, this is from Wikipedia because that's where everybody goes, Wikipedia. Communication is the activity of conveying meaningful information. I'm not going to read that to you because I know you can read. But the big part that I want you to get is that communication requires basically, fundamentally, two people. The person doing the communication and the person receiving the communication. And the communication is complete once the receiver has understood the message of the communication. And that's really, really important because you may have noticed that the world is a very busy place. And there is a lot clamoring for our attention. There is a lot in the world that is trying to communicate with us. And what that means is that we have an obligation for our communication to be to the point, to be clear to our audience, and to not contain extra noise. And fundamentally, at the end of the communication, the person who decides if our communication worked is our receiver. Our audience decides if we communicated clearly. We don't get to make that decision. And that can be kind of frustrating because you're thinking you're communicating clearly and your audience is still mystified and puzzled. And you'll know that you have mystified and puzzled your audience because they continue to ask questions that are fundamentally basic questions. And so if your audience seems to be asking the same basic questions over and over, no matter how hard you're trying to communicate, what that means is your communication is failing. So hopefully today we're going to be looking at some things that will help you communicate better, or maybe have some ways to look at your communication to see how you can improve it. Now, very often in the business world, we are looking at written communication. And the thing that I like about written communication is it lasts. It has a length of time that other things don't. I like knowing that I can pick up a book that was written 3,000 years ago, and I can climb into the mind of the person who wrote that. I can get that communication over 3,000 years. There's a part of me that just thinks that that's magic. Now, do I think our marketing communications are going to last 3,000 years? Oh gosh, I hope not. I hope not. But it's possible. But other communication is also important. We now have the technology that they did not have 3,000 years ago for things like videos and podcasts and other things. So we are, in all of our communications, providing a record of that communication. Some records are going to last longer, but think about rock art. You know, there is rock art that is 15,000, 20,000 years old. That is a communication. We may not understand exactly what that communication is today because we've lost the cultural wrapper for that communication. But at another level, that communication still happens, even if the communication is, oh my gosh, 20,000 years ago, people were communicating. And look how exquisite and beautiful whatever that message is that they were trying to communicate. But that's kind of magical, too. Yeah. All right, so now that we've kind of defined what communication is and kind of gotten into the magic of communication, people want communication in the way they prefer. So what does that mean? When I say that, what does that mean? Well, there are these things called information consumption styles. There are a lot of words, a lot of phrases that you'll hear out in the world that refer to this, but I kind of like to call them information consumption styles because that's really, for me, that's really what's going on. And it's one of the most important things that we can know about our audience is their preferred information consumption style, because this tells us how we should be designing the communication that we're going to deliver to our audience. So there are 4 styles: visual, auditory, read, write, which I also refer to as word-oriented for reasons I will come back to, and kinesthetic, which is a hands-on kind of way. Now, most people have a strong preference for 2 or more of these. Some people have a very strong preference for only 1, and some people have a strong preference for all 4. That's kind of interesting. So let's start with visual. Visual information consumers, they like pictures and line drawings. And by like, I mean that's where, if all things being equal, if they want to consume information, that is their preference. So they want pictures, they want line drawings, they want visual. I am not a visual information consumer. You may notice that my slides do not have a lot of graphics on them because I struggle to get information out of visual stuff. I do. My husband, strong visual learner, very strong in this. So how do you support visual consumers? You show concepts in graphics. This is a great way to show concepts. You want to show flowcharts, for example. Flowcharts are the bomb. They're fantastic. They show how information moves through a system, how tasks are related, those kinds of things. Flowcharts are fantastic for showing this. But also think tables. Tables are also graphics. So if you've got visual consumers in your audience, the more flowcharts and the more tables, the more well-designed pages that you can use, the more you can communicate to them in a way that makes them happy. And especially in today's world, especially on the web, color is important. Color is a visual cue. And on the web, color costs no more than non-color. In print, color may cost more, but on the web, color is free. You're not going to pay extra for colored pixels. It's free. So you can really create some visually interesting ways of communicating your message that are going to really appeal to your visual information consumers. Now, your kinesthetic consumers, they like hands-on stuff. We like texture. We like things that move, and I say we because I am a strong kinesthetic consumer. We like hands-on stuff. So if you are writing information for us, we like instructions. We like textures. We like very descriptive words. We can cope with drawings or photos, but you need to show movement or texture or things happening, that kind of thing, because that's the hook for us. is things that are moving, things that are doing, things that have a physicalness to them are going to be the hook for us. So if you're going to provide us with written words, you want to be very descriptive. If you're going to provide us pictures, you want to show us things moving. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to necessarily use animation. You can use arrows to show movement. So you can use photographs and show arrows of how the flange moves, for example, or how things move across this, or that kind of thing. And we'll be okay with that. We like that. But fundamentally, kinesthetic learners, we want motion, we want texture, we want things that are physical for us. Think of touching it. Think of fiddling with it. We want that. Word-oriented consumers, the more words, the better. We want lots and lots of written text because written text makes us happy, and I say us because I am also a very strong word-oriented consumer. If you are the kind of person who has sat and read diaper boxes or baby food bottles while you fed a child, you know what I mean by word-oriented. You have no choice. You're going to read words. It doesn't make any difference. You're just going to read them. So, and I am very strong in this as well. So I really want words, and I want lots of them. Most people in the Tech Comm world are strong word-oriented consumers. Most people in the marketing world lean more towards visual. And people who are good at both are very good. They're very good at both. I'm a good marketing copywriter. I am not a good marketing visual person because, again, I'm very weak in the visual. And there it is. So you want to create a lot of written text following the writing guidelines that I'm going to talk about in a few moments, but lots and lots of words for word-oriented people. They like that. Now, auditory consumers are an interesting group. They like sound. So if you've got auditory information consumers in your audience, podcasts are good. Video is good. I think I talked a little bit about video for your visual people, and video will work well for your auditory learners as long as you've got sound. And the way I watch, I'm pretty good at auditory. The way that I watch a video online is I do something else and listen. And by the way, I'm using myself as an example, not because I'm special, but because I need an example. And I've asked myself, and I'm okay with sharing my information. So I need an example, and I'm handy. That's how I watch video. Because, again, I'm not a strong visual person, but I'm a fairly strong auditory person. So I listen to video, which is always amusing, and drives my husband crazy because he's a strong visual person, and he thinks you have to watch video. I think less than that. So podcasts, recordings, those kinds of things are good. But what do you do if you need to write words and you want to support auditory learners? Write in a conversational style. Auditory learners like it when somebody is talking. As a matter of fact, auditory consumers of information typically quietly narrate their entire day. They like having conversation voices going on all the time. Now, if you're writing instruction manuals, you're thinking, okay, well, how do I support them? Well, even though written content is not the best for auditory people, you can trust them to read your instructions out loud. So that conversational tone is going to help them when they read it out loud because their brain is going to be tricked into feeling like they're having a conversation, which makes them very happy. That is what auditory consumers are after. They're after having a conversation with somebody. And by the way, we all know that good product instructions, for example, can reduce customer support calls because people can find the information on their own. But I need you to understand you will never be able to stop auditory consumers from calling support because they really want to have someone tell them. So they're the group who are always going to call support. No matter what you do, they're going to call support because they want something to tell them. It just makes them happy. All right. So here's something to think about. People can, all things being equal, obviously blind people cannot consume information visually. Deaf people cannot consume information auditorily, obviously. But all things being equal, people can learn in all 4 of these styles. But they have preferences, and they have ways they prefer to consume information. And it's your job to kind of address that. But I want you to understand there are no wrong styles. So just as there's no wrong eye color, there is no wrong style, which means the fact that I'm not particularly strong in visual means I'm just not particularly strong in visual. It doesn't mean I'm bad or wrong, or if I worked really hard I could fix that. It just means that it's just the way my brain is constructed. So we should not tell people they need to work on improving in that, because it's just how their brain is. It's much like your eye color. Your eye color isn't bad, it's just your eye color. And that's just the nature of it. Knowing that now means that people are much happier getting information in the mode or modes they're comfortable with, which means if we are presenting them with information in a mode they're not comfortable with, they're going to get upset and frustrated. And that's not good. That doesn't lead to a good customer experience. That doesn't lead them to be able to solve their own problems, and it just upsets and irritates people. So we don't want to do that. We want to provide content in a way that makes people happy, that lets them be successful, and helps them feel like they have had a good experience. Now, okay, you're thinking, I have no idea what the preferences are for my audience. How do I even begin to think this through? Well, you can start making some good guesses, because information consumption preferences also attract people to specific jobs. So visual kinesthetics, for example, they might be hairdressers, interior designers, architects, photographers. And, by the way, oh, shoot, there's our first typo, and that one's free, by the way. Visual kinesthetics are also engineers. Not every single engineer is a visual kinesthetic, but I can make a statement. Having taught engineers now for 8 years, engineers are almost always visual kinesthetics. And that's an interesting thing to know, especially if your reviewers are engineers, but your audience isn't. More on that in a minute. Word-oriented auditory people might be songwriters, actors, journalists, etc. You get a sense of this. So if you are, for example, writing content supporting a graphic arts or graphics kind of product, you can be pretty sure that your audience are visual learners. They're visual information consumers, because it is the nature of what they're doing. Think about it. If you are writing content for sound engineers, it is a pretty certain thing that the people you are creating content for are strong auditory information consumers, because they spend their day involved in sound, and so on. All right, here's the big secret, the big reveal. Now that you know a little bit about information consumption styles, you're always going to want to deliver content that matches your specific style. And this was, for me, the aha moment. Of being a strong kinesthetic word-oriented person, every time I had somebody review my content and they said, well, it's not quite, we need a little bit more, it's a problem, I don't understand it, I don't see what you're after, my first instinct was to add more words, which may be exactly the wrong thing to do, because my audience may have needed more visuals. So now that you know about this, number one, you can't unknow about this, but if you are, for example, like me, and you are a strong word-oriented learner, instead of throwing more words at it, maybe you should be adding a flowchart or some sort of conceptual graphic, something to appeal to the other information consumption styles, which are not your own, because you're not your audience. And this information consumption thing can also result in terrible communication issues in your workplace amongst especially your coworkers or your reviewers. If your reviewers are engineers, they are undoubtedly visual kinesthetic kinds of people. But if your audience is not a visual kinesthetic kind of person, your reviewers are going to be really kind of insisting on more visual and more kinesthetic, but that may not be appropriate for your audience. And so your job is to mediate that, to understand that your reviewers have specific information consumption styles that do not necessarily reflect those of your audience. They might. You want to think about that. But you need to arbitrate that so that you are not delivering content that perfectly suits your engineers who are not representative of your audience. Same goes with marketing. The people who are approving your marketing may or probably are strong visual kinds of people, but your audience may not be. For example, if you were doing marketing for athletic kinds of things, that audience is a strong kinesthetic audience. We like to go to the gym. We like to work out. We like to do that kind of stuff, but we may not be strongly visual. So if you may have a brilliant visual marketing program going, it is brilliantly unsuccessful because it contains absolutely no kinesthetic aspects. And so the audience you're trying to reach has no interest in it. It isn't working for them. Interesting stuff to think about. All right, so that's an important grounding. So we've covered a little bit on what communication is. We've looked at information consumption styles. Now let's look at how do we communicate clearly. And hopefully you will get some important stuff out of this. I don't always. And by the way, do you like my pathetic little graphic? This is an attempt to keep the visual learners interested. Given that I'm not, hopefully you are. All right, so let's start with some basics. And this is basics. No panic. I know probably every one of you knows what this is, but this is kind of, the basic moving on so I can make sure we all know. So sentences include, obviously, a subject, a verb, and some other stuff. This is how specific we're getting here. So the subject is the actor of the sentence. For example, Bob. Bob is the actor of our sentence. Then we have a verb. The verb is the action of the sentence performed by the subject. So, for example, we have runs. Now, in English, we can stop there. In English, all we need is an actor and a verb. But it's weird to think of communicating in two-word sentences. That would be weird. You can imagine, hopefully you're giggling, you can imagine trying to spend your day communicating in only two-word sentences. It's not going to go well, and it's going to be strange. So it's not unusual, but it's not normal. We typically have more. And that more is the predicate stuff. So the predicate stuff tells what the actor did or where the action happened or a lot of other things. I don't know enough about, for example, French or German or Hebrew to make any statements about those languages. I'm hopeful that for those of you who are speakers of those languages, you're kind of extrapolating out. I don't have any training in any of those languages, so I can only speak that English. So, for example, we have a prepositional phrase, to the car. Giving us a complete sentence, Bob runs to the car. All right, so that's the basics for a sentence. Now, active voice. Active voice is critical when you are writing, hoping to create engaging writing. Because active voice depends on the subject, the actor, to do stuff. And what that means is, for active voice, we front load the sentence with the actor. The actor comes first in the sentence. So passive voice is, the award was won by the writers. That's passive voice. And what happens with passive voice is, at a very unconscious, we don't even know we're doing it kind of way, our brain has to do the work to flip that sentence around to understand what's going on. And that's a little bit of extra effort that gets in the way of understanding the sentence, which is why writing an active voice is a much better way to go, because the brain doesn't have to make that flip. So the active voice is, the writers won the award. See, we front-loaded the sentence with who did this. You always want to write in active voice. Now, if you're thinking, gosh, I don't know how to even do that, and a lot of people don't, and that's perfectly fine, I always have junior writers start practicing, start building that muscle by starting sentences with "you can." Now, once that muscle has grown and they can start their sentences reliably with "you can," then we can shift to the imperative. The imperative has an implied "you can," but the words "you can" comes out. So instead of saying "you can run to the store," we drop "you can" and have a sentence that just says "run to the store." That's the imperative. Run to the store is the imperative. But to build that muscle, I have junior writers start with "you can." And it's just, not every sentence starts with "you can," but it's almost impossible to write a passive voice sentence if you start the sentence with "you can." I used to say it is impossible, but a very clever person took that challenge and came up with a passive voice sentence, which I did not record in any way. So I can't share it with you for those of you who are grammarians so that you can enjoy the beauty that it was, and I must tell you it was beautiful. But it's almost impossible. All right, English has 7 or 8 tenses. Apparently, I hang out with linguists sometimes, and apparently to start a fight among linguists, all you have to do is say, so English, 7 or 8 tenses, and then step back. It's very similar to the Tech Comm world, where you say, so, spaces after a period, 1 or 2, and then you step back and the fight begins. It doesn't matter to us one way or the other if it's 7 or 8. Other languages have more tenses, less tenses. Yeah. We care most about present tense because present tense puts the action in the now. And action that is happening right now is more relevant and more immediate to us. Our brains like that. It's happening right now, which is naturally more interesting to us. So if you have to use past tense or future tense, you want to make sure that it's because there is no other way to actually talk about it. And if you are constantly writing in the present tense, those very few times where past or future is the only way to say it will stand out like a sore thumb. So it really is important. It's just, for example, our sentence, Bob runs to the car, past tense, Bob ran to the car. What that does for us is it says, well, it happened at some point. I guess it worked out. I never heard anything more about that, so I guess, it worked out okay for Bob, I guess. It is not inherently interesting to us because it's something that happened at some point in the past. We don't know when. Maybe it was last week, perhaps it was last year, who knows. Future tense, Bob will run to the car. Something is going to happen at some point, we don't know when. Maybe, is it going to happen soon? I'm hungry and I'd like some lunch. Can you call me when he's going to do that? Because I've got other stuff to get done. The timing is uncertain. We don't know when it's going to happen. And especially in a world that is constantly trying to get your attention, it's not happening right now. That's the important thing. So we have other things to do. But present tense, Bob runs to the car, it is happening right now. And something else is going to happen right now. And by the way, present for our brains is about 5 seconds. There's actually been research into this. Who knew, right? So anything that is happening right now is happening in a 5-second window. And that is inherently more interesting to us than anything else. All right. By the way, I want to come back to this for 1 second. So if you are writing, for example, product instructions, and you are constantly speaking in future tense, or you are speaking in future tense unnecessarily, what you're also doing, whether you realize it or not, is you are adding a level of uncertainty to the outcome of the action that you've just asked your audience to take. And that doesn't sound good. We need to, in Tech Comm, be the voice of authority, and we need to speak with certainty about our products. So when we say the report will print, we are inherently adding, whether you know it or not, almost a coin toss. it sounds as though, in a way, we are saying, well, it will print, or at least we hope it'll print. Frankly, we never got it to work out. But if you get it to print, let us know what you did, because, boy, that's what we designed it to do. Who knows if it's going to do that, really, right? I mean, I'm being silly, right? But I'm not either, because we want to be more certain than that. All right, second person. Second person is very important. English has a bunch of pronouns, he, she, it, they, we, I, and you. Other languages have other. Spanish, for example, does not have an it. It just doesn't happen. German does, but Spanish does not. Both are gender languages. They're just different ways of doing it. We want to write in the second person. We want to write to you because we are communicating with another person. It may be asynchronous communication. For example, if you are watching this webinar, I am talking directly to you, but I'm talking to you in a time-shifted way. You could be watching this video a year after we recorded it, but I am yet still talking to you. I mentioned picking up a book written 3,000 years ago, and it is still talking to us today, but it clearly was not written to us specifically and concretely because 3,000 years ago, the writer had no way of knowing we would exist, but he or she is still talking to us. So because we are talking to a specific person, we want to address that person. We don't want to talk to them as the user because that would be weird. Imagine spending your day directly addressing somebody as the user. Would the user like to go get some coffee? Last time we went, the user got a muffin. Does the user want a muffin again? That would be very strange. Even in Geekland, that would be very strange, and people would look at you oddly. Because we are communicating through our videos, through our written materials, through our visuals with people directly, we don't want to do that. Unless there is actually a different group of people separate from the person we are directly communicating with. This typically comes up in, for example, administrators' communications. So if you're talking to a systems administrator, they actually have a group of people they refer to as their users. So obviously in that situation it's appropriate, but it's not appropriate when you're just talking directly to people. Second person in English is also easier to read. Because it is more familiar and more trusted, it is just simply a better way to talk because it is going to sneak in past the emotional guards. And you know this because think of all of the imperative, if not actually directly second person, that you read in marketing materials, ad campaigns, etc. So I unfortunately don't know enough about other languages to be able to tell you if this is the case in other languages, but I can obviously, as a native speaker, speak definitively about English. And if somebody does know in the other languages and would like to let me know, you'll be getting my email address again at the end. So that's cool. All right. Because we're writing directly to people, we need to keep focus on those people. People need to know why they need to know this information. Nobody, I have a recent post on my website, a recent article on my website about your content is not Jimmy Buffett. And if you don't know who Jimmy Buffett is, that's fine. You can go to my website and find out. Nobody is sitting around hoping that you're going to give them some more content because the last content you gave them was so interesting, we'll just sit here quietly and wait. How about now? F5, how about now? F5, how about now? That's not happening. People need to be told why they need to know this information in a way that makes sense to them. Not sense to you, to them. Because remember, our audience is the arbiters of the communication. So, for example, Widget Blue uses tags to talk to other products. We read that and we go, good for Widget Blue. Yay, Widget Blue. There's nothing in that sentence that is inherently interesting to us as an audience. We applaud the technology. Yay! Maybe, right? But if we rephrase this sentence, make it reader-focused, second person, etc., we get, you can use tags to let Widget Blue talk to other products. Now, again, I started that sentence with second person. I said start sentences with you can. Obviously, we could do this with the imperative by just saying use tags to let Widget Blue talk to other products. We could absolutely do that too. But the point here is we are directly addressing our reader and showing them something they can do. And that's important. All right. Short is good. Short sentences are easy to understand because there are fewer ideas in a short sentence. So, no more than 25 words per sentence. This is not something that Sharon has decided to evangelize to the world because I have unresolved control issues. This is actually upheld by neuroscience. People have looked at how our brains work, and we seem to have a carrying capacity in our head for information, and that carrying capacity seems to be at about 20 to 25 words. So short is good, and the closer you can get to under 20, the better off you are. This is also really important for non-native speakers of the language you're writing in, because even if they are fairly fluent, remember, nobody is reading our content in a burden-free world. They are reading our content in a world that is clamoring for their attention, whether it's because they're busy and need to get this stuff wrapped up so they can get their train, or whatever it is. They're not reading our stuff in a perfect world with no distraction. So even even for people who are fairly fluent in another language, making fewer ideas in each sentence will make it easier for them to understand. Short paragraphs. As you know, paragraphs are groups of related sentences, obviously. No more than 3 to 5 sentences per paragraph. Now, some of you have just gasped, why, I can't possibly communicate that way. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And you can do it more clearly, more accurately, more concisely, because it forces you to actually look at the sentences you're writing and stop writing sentences like, in other words, blah, blah, blah. If you start looking at your writing, you'll discover somewhere around the 3rd to 5th sentence, you are slightly changing topic. Sometimes it's dramatic, but often you're just slightly changing topic. That's where you want to break into a new paragraph. What you're doing is you're giving your reader a mental break when you break that paragraph. You are setting them up because it's the nature of a paragraph. It's going to be about something else that's not quite the same. So you're giving them that mental break. You are letting their brain do what their brain does in a way that is not intrusive and will help your communication. Now, obviously, sections are groups of related paragraphs. We all know that, right? No more than 3 to 5 paragraphs before you have another section heading. I am not saying label every paragraph. As a matter of fact, research shows if you are labeling every paragraph, you are actually hindering comprehension. There's something about every paragraph having a label, having a heading, that reduces comprehension. The magic number is 3 to 5. 3 to 5 paragraphs, 3 to 5 sentences. This seems to be where our brains really like things, and it actually enhances and supports the way the brain actually consumes information. All right, obviously, as you know, headings are used to break the text into chunks. Headings visually break up your page, which makes it easier for your reader to scan for the information he or she is looking for. So it improves scannability, which is really important because nobody is sitting down, well, not nobody, but I actually met somebody the other day who reads instruction manuals from cover to cover before she actually uses the product. And I told her on behalf of the entire field of technical communication, we thank you. And she giggled. And I said, no, really, we thank you. You are the person that we look for. And I thank you. Thousands of people are happy to know you're here. But most people scan looking for the information they're looking for. And they're going to key on headings. And you know this because this is how you scan for information. It's just how it happens. So those headings are real important in that regard. Headings also typically make your information look easier to understand. And humans are remarkably suggestible. Things that look easy to understand often turn out to be easy to understand. So you're supporting that. And then headings also show the relationships between ideas or parts of ideas, which is critical in overview sections where you're introducing your reader to new concepts. You're showing them how the ideas fit together. And it's a very subtle thing, but it just supports that information a little bit more. Now, obviously, as you know, paragraphs should start with topic sentences, because topic sentence explains the point of the paragraph. Your reader can get the point of the entire paragraph by reading the topic sentence. Now, what this does is this lets your reader scan for the headings. They read their first sentence they find a heading that they like. They read the first sentence. This lets them know if they have found the information they're looking for or if they should continue on. Now, obviously, other sentences in your paragraph amplify and support your topic sentence, and a good way to end a paragraph or a section is with an example that illustrates the concept, or a limitation or a special case your reader should know now that they know about the general case. For example, and here's an example, you read that while I take a sip of water. I'm going to pull it apart in a minute, so don't feel like you need to read it like to totally understand it. All right, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's parse that. Our opening sentence, another challenge is that business writing follows very specific formulas and structure. This is our topic sentence. It contains the point of the paragraph. It's short, it's 12 words, and it uses fairly short words. So it's easy to understand. A non-native speaker could read that and feel they've understood what that means. The next sentence is an example. Think about your resume, for example. What this has done is it immediately puts a picture of your resume in your head as the reader. So now that you have a picture in your head, you can instantly relate to what's coming. So that's a real important thing. Examples are real important. Then we have the next sentence. Your writing style, comma, the points you highlight about your career or education, comma, and the look and feel play an important role. So now that we have an example, we're pulling out the important features to think about. This sentence is 21 words. Look how long that is. Now that we're counting words, look how long that is. And that actually is a lot of words. And that's, fortunately, it's a series of 3 things. Technically, we could make those bullets if we wanted. We didn't, but we could. And then we have a company uses all of these to decide whether to offer you a job. We have brought all of these ideas to a conclusion. In this case, it's the point of a resume to get hired. No sentence is longer than 25 words, and we have 4 sentences total. Tight communication. I didn't write it. A friend of mine wrote that. All right, so in sum, because we've got just under 10 minutes left, let's think about these concepts for video scripts or other communication. So to sum up, cover all 4 information consumption styles. Now, if you want to find out about your own, there is a website. I have no association with it at all, but it gives you a little fast online test you can take. I believe it's 20 questions. There are no wrong answers, and you can select more than one answer for each question. So if you read the question and several of the answers are true for you, you can select those. This is also a great thing to do. It's just a fun thing to do in your department. So if you're looking for something fun to do, also I use it when I am a manager of a group to find out where people's, and I don't want to say strengths and weaknesses because it sounds like they should work on their weaknesses. That's not the case. But to find out where everybody is strong. So if there's somebody like me who is not strong at visual, but we've got Joe who is strong at visual, really strong at visual, then we know we should run all visuals past Joe because he's really good at that. I'm just saying. Tight writing, 25 words or less per sentence, 3 to 5 sentences per paragraph, headings every 3 to 5 paragraphs. If you just do that, you're going to be communicating more strongly, just instantly. Active voice, present tense, second person, and then reader focused. Why does your reader care about this information? And phrase it so that they understand why they care. The burden of understanding why they care is on us, not on them. Okay, I made it with 8 minutes to spare for thoughts, questions, and stuff. Now, don't forget, you'll be getting a link to the recording and to the slides tomorrow. The hope is always to have it out first thing, but we all know technology doesn't always cooperate, so it could be late tomorrow. For those of you in Europe, that would mean probably while you're sleeping, which is fine. It'll be there, but it will be there. Okay, so do we have any questions? I know that was really fast, but I wanted to make sure that we had time for questions, and we do. Okay.
Hi, Sharon.
Where's my There you are. I found you. You were lost, but now you're found.
The first question that's come in is, you cite research. Whose research and how current is it?
There is a book out right now. It is out in the last actually in the last year. Hold on, I am getting into my iPad because it's an electronic book for me. And let me get into this app. I'm tip of my tongue. Okay, loading. Drunk Tank Pink by Adam Alter, A-D-A-M-A-L-T-E-R. The subtitle is "And Other Unexpected Forces That Shape How We Think, Feel, and Behave." That's one. And the other one is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, K-A-H-N-E-M-A-N. Those two will get you in the right direction. If of the two, if I could only get one, I would get Thinking Fast and Slow. It's amazing. I've read it now 4 times, and I will probably be reading it again soon. Because every time I read it, I get another thing out of it that I didn't have before. And if you didn't get those, send me an email, and I will, or I'll post. If a couple of you send me an email, I'll probably post an article on my website, so you can check there in a week or something. Okay, next question.
Okay, next question is, if an audience is composed of more than one preference, how do you approach your communications?
I typically try to hit all 4. Very often, I don't know what my audience is. So I try and make sure I support all 4 in my communications. My visual is not, it's a pathetic attempt to communicate with my visual people, I know. But I try, right? And if it's a really important communication, I have some visual people I can run it by. If you know that your audience is 2, I would just go gangbusters on those 2. I wouldn't pick one over the other because they're really not that difficult to support 2. It's really not. Go gangbusters on both of them. And that probably didn't help, did it?
I'm waiting to see if the person replies back. But in the meantime, the next question has come in is, what are the percentages of the 4 communication styles? For example, with 20% of the people are kinesthetic, with 30% visual, 25% read, write, etc.
I know that you can get that information off the Vark-learn.com website because they're doing longitudinal studies. And by the way, the information that you provide for your answers will be pulled into their data set, but you in no way identify who you are, and they don't track IPs. So it's completely anonymized, and you can get that information there. It's roughly split out evenly, but I believe that visual is slightly more. And by slightly, I mean like maybe as much as 5% more. But I haven't looked at that data in a couple of years, so if it turns out on that website they say it's different than that, good then. I was wrong. I'm telling you up front I could be wrong. But I think it's about that. And by the way, the next time you have somebody say, oh my God, because of YouTube or Pinterest or insert thing here, we must do only visual, the answer to that is wrong. Because there are people, a lot of people like me, who are not strong visual, which means if you convert all of your information to visual, you've just kicked us out of the bucket. You've done nothing but frustrate us because we're not strong visual. So this is your pushback point. You go, well, no, we can provide and should provide some visual, but we cannot go completely visual. It's the wrong idea. All right, next question.
Okay. Next question is there some way to find out what type of learners various careers attract, i.e. realtors, trades, office support staff, etc.?
You can, that information is also on that website. It's a huge resource. They talk about the kinds of employment people with certain mixes have, and it holds out. I mean, if you're not a kinesthetic person, for example, hairdressing is probably right out for you. My husband is not a kinesthetic sort of guy. The idea of working out for him makes him want to lie on the floor. That's as kinesthetic as he's going to get. And it doesn't make him a bad person. It's just not his thing. It's not the way his brain is wired. He is, however, a brilliant writer, because that is how his brain is wired. I know I keep emphasizing that, and I hope I'm not beating it to death, but inevitably somebody walks away with, well, they're just not trying hard. No, that's not it at all. So, yeah, I know I keep sending you to that website, but that information is there. All right, next question.
Okay, next question is there a clear-cut difference between learning styles of women versus men?
No. No. There's no more difference. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So, yeah, no sex-based difference.
Okay. And the next question is, what do you do if your reviewers have different information consumption styles than your users?
Your viewers than your users? Or
your
reviewers.
Your reviewers.
What?
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. When I have been brought in to do consulting, one of the first things that I do is I start watching people to see if I can get a sense of what their learning styles might be, their consumption styles. And if the team is open to it, and most are, I have everybody take the test. I make a game out of it. And then we talk about, look, all the people who are doing reviews are X and Y. But we need to be supporting, for example, all four for our audience. So we get that you guys want to turn, for example, all of this into screen capture videos. But that's only going to support a small part of our total audience. And because everybody has taken the test and everybody starts seeing where their strengths are, they start getting it. They start going, oh, got it. Now, sometimes you'll get somebody who's like, oh, this is silliness, and I don't believe in this at all. And you go, oh, okay. At that point, obviously, you get management involved or something. But it's a great way to just kind of get everybody starting to be sensitive to this and starting to get that buy-in. And typically, people start making jokes about it. You know, well, sure, but Sue is all, you know, yeah, of course you told Sue, but she's 0 on auditory. I don't know why you told her. She'll have no way to remember it. You know, people start making jokes about it and start lightening things up, and it can really, I found, really support a team and kind of help them move forward in communication. So, all right, we are at 2 minutes after. If you need to take off and go, I totally get it. That's perfect, and I want to thank you for coming. I hope you have learned something new. You see my email on the screen. You see my Twitter account on the screen. You also see my website. Feel free to contact me through any of, well, you see my office, home office phone number as well there. You can contact me through any of those. Don't forget to say thank you to DCL again. Yay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because they're the bomb. They've hosted this and given us this opportunity. And I think at this point, we're going to cut you guys loose. If you have, by the way, if you're like me and you wake up tomorrow and you suddenly realize you've got a question, perfect. Feel free to contact me. I am more than happy to answer more questions. I just want to let people get on with their day. And I noticed that we're having a dropout. People are dropping out because they have to get on with their day. So I want to thank you so much. Now, go do something amazing with your day. And thank you, guys. Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you.